Hello everyone, if this is your first time visiting the channel, welcome, and if it's not and you are returning, welcome back, and thank you for joining me as I cover another solved case for you guys today. If you are a fan of true crime content, and if you have a moment to spare, please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. This past week, the channel did have a recent surge of subscribers. Let's keep that same energy going. We are on case number 23, and this one is a very fascinating case to me. It's no secret that there are some really evil people out there, but it feels like you can't trust anyone, not even your best friend. As always, I will now put up my disclaimer. The victim in this case suffered an extremely violent death. A big theme of this case is betrayal. You never truly know what another person is thinking or what their true intentions are. And sometimes, unfortunately, even if you figure out a person's intentions, it may be too late. And that's what happened in this case. Let's get started. This is the murder of Jamie Hahn. This case really begins as a love story. In 2006, a 20-year-old student named Hahn was attending classes at the University of North Carolina. He had a passion for politics, which led him to volunteer for a presidential campaign where he would help organize events and rallies with other college students. Eventually, he was hired on as an intern where he would develop a crush on his boss, a 22-year-old woman who also had a love for politics named Jamie Kirk. Jamie was an extremely passionate and caring person. She spent her entire life trying to help and support others. She was always smiling, and she would welcome any person she met as her friend immediately with open arms. The people who knew Jamie always talked about how compassionate she was. Hahn often describes Jamie as the light of his life. Upon meeting, the two quickly developed a strong friendship. Hahn would later describe Jamie as one of his best friends during this time, but it did not immediately turn romantic as both of them were in other relationships at the time. But as fate would have it, both of their respective relationships ended and they decided to try to begin a relationship with each other. It didn't take long for the young couple to become head over heels for each other. Jamie's career in politics was excelling, and she began working for a state senator. And Hahn also completed his university degree at this time. After just 5 months of dating, Hahn and Jamie became engaged, and they married on April 18th, 2009. Many friends and family were, of course, at the attendance of their wedding, but one person that attended the wedding would later savagely kill the now Jamie Hahn. This person wasn't just an attendee at the wedding. He was also the best man and Hahn's best friend. This man's name is Jonathan Broyhill, but I'm going to call him JB for the remainder of this video. Let's rewind back to the start of Hahn and JB's friendship. Both men grew up in Lenoir, North Carolina. Hahn was just a freshman in high school when he met the older JB at a youth group in church they both were a part of. The pair immediately became best friends. They spent a lot of time together hanging out at restaurants or coffee shops. Hahn and JB quickly bonded over their political beliefs and remained in each other's life as the years went by. When Hahn and Jamie became a couple, JB was one of the first people in his life that Hahn introduced her to. As it often was for anyone who met Jamie, she and JB quickly became great friends too. Jamie and Hahn treated JB as family. They became so close that every Monday night they would have dinner together at the Hahn's home. The three of them went on vacations together. Jamie and Hahn deeply cared for and adored JB. It's really heartbreaking to think about, honestly, because Jamie and Hahn were the type of friends who would do anything and everything for you. By 2010, Jamie had developed a political strategy company called Sky Blue Strategies, and around this time, JB was struggling to find work. So Jamie, out of the goodness of her heart, offered JB a job. Jamie hired JB to do the accounting and financial reporting to the FEC, or the Federal Election Commission. Former U.S. Congressman Brad Miller had hired Sky Blue Strategies for his re-election campaign. Jamie and Hahn became very well known in the political community, but as their success grew, JB was beginning to decline in seemingly multiple ways. Although Brad Miller suspended his re-election campaign in 2011, Sky Blue had already raised thousands of dollars for the campaign. So instead of focusing on fundraising, Sky Blue shifted their focus toward issuing refund checks to the donors. In August of 2012, JB began to reveal to Hahn and Jamie that he had been diagnosed with various health issues. He told them he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. A few weeks later, he told them he was having problems with his gallbladder and was needing to get surgery to remove gallstones. By early December of 2012, JB expressed to Jamie that due to his recent health issues, he needed to find a less stressful job. Jamie also agreed, as JB's employment was almost up anyway. Since Brad Miller suspended his re-election, they were not able to afford JB's payroll anymore with Sky Blue, and Jamie promised JB that she would assist him in finding a new job. Even though JB was no longer on the payroll, he continued to help Jamie manage finances, and he also created FEC quarterly reports. In early 2013, Jamie began receiving calls from campaign staffers that were concerned with their recent delays in refund check disbursements. At first, Jamie and Nation just figured it was some sort of a billing issue with the bank, as they knew thousands of dollars were in these bank accounts. But as a couple more months went by, the calls became more frequent, and the Hahns were being told that the checks that had been received were being bounced. Jamie tried to reach out to JB to help with this issue. The Hahns were getting more concerned. They couldn't understand why the checks kept bouncing, but every time she asked JB to sit down so they could figure out what the issue was, he would bitch and complain about his gallstones, or he would tell Jamie and Nation that he couldn't deal with the issue right now because he had upcoming surgeries. Nation and Jamie were very understanding and patient, and were also extremely concerned with their best friend's medical issues. They both frequently drove him to doctor's appointments and allowed him to stay the night at their house when he would complain about being ill. On April 8th, 2013, JB agreed to meet Jamie at her and Nation's home so they can both draft the quarterly report that was due to the FEC the following week. But JB didn't show up, and when they finally got in contact with him, he claimed that he was working late for a new job he had gotten, so they rescheduled the meeting for the following evening on April 9th. This time JB did show up, but he told Nation and Jamie that when he had gotten the surgery to remove the gallstones, the doctors found a spot on his pancreas and they believed that it was pancreatic cancer. Nation and Jamie were heartbroken by this news. They spent the entire rest of the night comforting JB instead of working on that quarterly report. By now, I'm sure you all have probably guessed, due to the lack of sympathy in my voice, that none of these medical issues JB has told the Hahns that he had were true. This shitbag lied about all of it. This would all come out during the trial. Of course, Nation and Jamie had no idea he had been lying to them. Once JB left their home after telling them that he probably had pancreatic cancer, they cried together over their friend. They believed, like so many people do, that pancreatic cancer is highly likely to be a death sentence. They thought they were going to lose their best friend. And this really pisses me off because I've had family members with pancreatic cancer and it is not a joke. And the fact that this piece of shit lied about it is really infuriating to me. Nation would later describe their conversation that night, and it just kills me. He says that through tears while comforting Jamie as she was crying about JB's news, she turned to Nation and she said, quote, "Don't you think we should have a baby?" End quote. Jamie went on to tell him that she wanted any child that they had together to know all of the important people in their lives. Jamie was so worried that JB wouldn't live very long with this cancer diagnosis that she wanted to start a family immediately so that JB could meet their child. But Nation and Jamie would never get to live their dream of becoming parents together, because just 15 days later, Jamie would be murdered and Nation would still be in the hospital with severe injuries. The last couple of weeks of Jamie's life were filled with constant lies, all coming from JB. She would try several more times to get JB to help her with the quarterly report, and each time she tried, JB gave her an excuse. He would be sick, or he would forget his computer, and Nation and Jamie unfortunately believed him. Like I said, they would both drive him to these so-called doctor's appointments, and there was even one time toward the middle of April that they both drove him to the doctor. It was supposed to be the appointment for them to confirm whether or not JB did indeed have pancreatic cancer. JB himself would later admit that he lied about this appointment, of course, and he just walked around the hospital for about 2 hours while Nation and Jamie were waiting in the lobby, praying for their friend to be okay. But JB came back and told them that they did in fact diagnose him with pancreatic cancer. Just absolutely disgusting. A couple of days after this, Jamie and Nation went on vacation to the beach to celebrate Nation's 27th birthday and their 4-year wedding anniversary. They returned back from their trip on Sunday, April 21st, and immediately upon returning back home, JB took this opportunity. He stole Nation's credit card and booked himself a one-way ticket from Charlotte, North Carolina to Las Vegas, Nevada, departing the next day on April 22nd in the afternoon. JB canceled this flight just 1 hour before the plane took off. And I really wish he would have just taken that flight instead of what he would do to Jamie and Nation that same evening. He then purchased a one-way ticket departing from Raleigh, North Carolina to Charlotte, North Carolina for Tuesday, April 23rd, but he would never make it on this train. On Monday, April 22nd, 2013, JB once again agreed to meet Jamie at her and Nation's home at 1705 Tealwood Place to finalize reports. Nation came home from work just before 5 p.m., and the events I'm about to describe came from Nation himself. He came home. He noticed Jamie was in her home office on the phone, and JB was walking through the kitchen. He greeted JB with a hug. They talked for a minute, and Nation invited JB to stay the night as he thought that JB had a doctor's appointment the following morning. JB accepted the invitation and told Nation he had his clothes packed in a bag with him in case he did stay the night. Nation states that it was a normal conversation. JB was acting normal. No red flags. He didn't sound angry or upset. So Nation proceeded to go upstairs to his and Jamie's bedroom. He got dressed out of his work clothes and he went to use the bathroom. While Nation was in the bathroom, all of a sudden, Jamie screams Nation's name. Nation instantly runs down the stairs. He's screaming back to her what's happening. He obviously knows something is terribly wrong. Jamie keeps screaming for Nation, and she's also screaming JB's name as well, in what Nation describes as a different way. Once Nation gets downstairs, Jamie yells out, quote, "He's trying to kill me," end quote. By now, Nation is down the stairs, and the first thing he sees is blood on the floor, and then he sees Jamie's legs peeking out from behind a wall. And then he sees JB standing over Jamie with a large kitchen knife that he had recently purchased and had brought with him in his bag of clothes he had brought for that night. Nation, upon seeing this, shouts at JB, quote, "What the fuck are you doing?" end quote. And JB doesn't respond as he walks away from Jamie and heads towards Nation. As he walks towards Nation, he raises the knife in the air, and Nation grabs the blade with his left hand to prevent JB from stabbing him. So he's grabbing the knife with his left hand and with his right open palm hits JB in the face over and over again to get him to release the knife. Meanwhile, during the struggle, Nation yells at Jamie to get out of the house. Jamie miraculously manages to get up. She is covered in blood. She runs out the side door, runs across the street, and she collapses in a neighbor's yard. Nation breaks free from the altercation with JB, and he follows outside after Jamie. By the time Nation gets to where Jamie is, neighbors were already tending to her. As Nation was running over to his wife, he was yelling for someone to call 911. Multiple neighbors had heard Nation's plea, and 911 was called.
911, what's the location of your emergency?
Hey, we have an emergency at the Killbriar Drive.
Okay, what's going on?
I got him on the phone.
What's going on?
I got him on the phone.
Ma'am, what's happening over there?
I don't know. There's a lady bleeding terribly.
Okay, how did
She looks like she's been shot.
Okay.
Has she been shot? I don't know. They're pressing on her stomach. It's all in her stomach.
So the person who stabbed her, is she still there?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know who it is. It's a
Okay.
lady that was running down the street, and she's been stabbed, and she's in the yard. The person's still in the house, and we need the police as soon as
Okay,
possible.
the police are coming as well. Is this a woman who's able to maybe give a description of the suspect?
Yeah, hold on real quick. Sir, can you give a description of who it is? Yes. What's the name?
John Broyhill.
John Broyhill?
J-O-N Broyhill.
What's he wearing?
He's wearing a plaster.
The police are here.
Neighbors tried to apply as much pressure to Jamie's wounds as they could. They gave Nation something to wrap his injured hand in, and Nation stood by his wife's side until the ambulance took her away. Here is Nation talking about this moment during his testimony at the trial.
I felt like she was going to make it. The chaplain had walked in and said, you know, Jamie's still with us. And it was the happiest that I could ever remember feeling. And then the surgeon came in and said, she's still with us and she's exceeding expectations, but she's touch and go, and the next 24 hours will tell the tale. But I just never gave up hope. Because we had had a conversation, you know, because she'd gotten out of the house, because we had a conversation, I just believed, you know, and when I left her, I mean, we said, I love you. And while she was complaining about her breathing, she was with us. And so, but finally the doctors told us that she wasn't. Jamie wasn't going to make it, and so we we were with her in the hotel. I mean, in the hospital room, and sat there, and it was like a little bit before 2 a.m. I think.
Did Jamie ever respond to you or talk with you ever again?
No, I felt like her eyes were looking at me at points, or at least I wanted to believe that, but no.
Your parents, her parents?
Yeah, family arrived, and then friends started arriving that Tuesday morning. But it was our respective parents were in the room with me and Jamie.
I don't know why things like this happen to such good people. All Nation and Jamie ever wanted to do was to help people, and a man who was supposed to be their best friend shattered them. JB didn't have cancer, but he was a cancer to this couple. Paramedics took Jamie, Nation, and JB to the hospital. When the police found JB, he had inflicted wounds to his wrists and stabbed himself once in the stomach, which is why he was also taken to the hospital for his injuries. His injuries, however, were mild compared to Nation's, let alone Jamie's injuries. On the way to the hospital, JB became visibly upset and he began crying, and he said, quote, "It's been a long time coming. I just want to die." End quote. Nation's knife wound to his hand was very severe. The deep laceration almost severed 2 of his fingers. His hand required major surgery to be repaired, and he also had a few cuts to his forearms. Jamie fell unconscious on her way to the hospital. As soon as she arrived, they rushed her into emergency surgery, but Jamie Hahn would never wake back up. While doctors were stitching Nation's injured hand, he repeatedly asked them about Jamie's status. He actually had a lot of hope that Jamie was going to pull through. I wish Nation had been right. But sadly, 2 days after the savage attack at approximately 2 a.m. on April 24th, 2013, Jamie Hahn had succumbed to her injuries. Nation and Jamie's family were, of course, devastated. An autopsy was quickly performed on Jamie after her death. She had over a dozen stab wounds throughout her body. She was stabbed in the torso, chest, and to her back multiple times. The stab wound to her torso had penetrated her liver. There was one stab wound to the chest that penetrated her lung and severed an artery. I can't imagine her pain or fear that she had during the attack. Jamie and Nation went above and beyond for JB. To them, he was a part of their family. But why would he do this? Investigators quickly analyzed the crime scene from within the Hahn's home. They would describe the scene as extremely bloody. Some of the investigators would even say it was the most horrendous crime scene that they had ever seen during their careers. It appeared that the attack had started and ended in the kitchen. A chair was knocked over during the altercation. There was blood trails leading from the kitchen to the side door where Jamie had ran out. The blood trail continued out the side door, down the driveway, across the road, and finally ended in a neighbor's front yard. The police marked this entire blood trail from where it started to where it ended. While JB was recovering from his self-inflicted injuries, he was interviewed 3 separate times before he was arrested for the murder of Jamie Hahn and the attempted murder of Nation Hahn. During the final interview before he was arrested, JB would claim that he only remembered bits and pieces of the entire attack. He remembered stabbing Jamie multiple times, but he did not remember attacking Nation or inflicting injuries on himself. He also claimed that he heard voices in his head telling him to hurt people, and that the knife he had purchased and brought with him was intended for himself only, and not for Jamie or Nation, which, if you ask me, is very convenient. And by convenient, I mean total bullshit. When JB's trial finally began, all of JB's lies came to light. The first thing that was revealed was that JB didn't have multiple sclerosis, gallstones, or pancreatic cancer. That, of course, I've already explained. But what was also revealed was that JB had received help from multiple friends, including Nation and Jamie, financially supporting him for these fake illnesses. JB, as it turns out, was terrible with handling money. By the time he was in his early 20s, he was several $1,000s in debt and had already filed for bankruptcy. What he spent all this money on, I have no clue. But with JB faking his illnesses being exposed, investigators were able to zero in what they believed was the real motive for Jamie's murder. It was then revealed in open court that while JB was working for Jamie and Sky Blue Strategies, he was embezzling the funds and was writing himself checks from the campaign account between 2011 and the beginning months of 2013. In total, he embezzled over $46,000. This was why Jamie received calls that the checks were bouncing, because JB was taking the cash for himself. No one knows what truly happened during that brief 5 to 10 minute period when Nation Hahn went upstairs and Jamie was left all alone with JB. Jamie isn't here to shed some light on that, and JB seems to have never gone into detail of this himself. But the prosecution claims that Jamie must have confronted JB about what happened to the money. Maybe she figured out that it was him cashing in the checks, and in that moment, JB decided to start stabbing her. Or in another scenario, JB was realizing he wasn't going to be able to keep his dirty little secret any longer. So he decided to kill Jamie and Nation Hahn. I tend to believe the latter. Either way, Jamie's death was so unnecessary and ridiculous. The defense team tried to depict JB as a lost soul who just couldn't handle life, that he was intending to only kill himself, but that something in him just snapped, and unfortunately, Jamie was just in the way when he did snap. I watched all of this trial, and the defense team really annoyed me at certain points, specifically when they revealed that JB was gay. The Hahns knew about this, and the defense claimed that JB was so afraid of coming out, as where they are from in North Carolina, it's very conservative, and his family wouldn't approve of his lifestyle. They kept questioning Nation when he took the stand, asking him if JB would have been treated poorly if he had revealed his sexuality in the city they grew up in. And it was just so beyond irrelevant and annoying, honestly, because it had literally nothing to do with Jamie's murder. I understand how they were trying to gain sympathy from the jury, but it just felt more like a waste of everyone's time. The bottom line is that there was clear evidence that JB had premeditated the murder. For one, he bought that kitchen knife he used on both Nation and Jamie about 2 weeks prior before the murder. If he was planning on killing himself, why not do it as soon as he purchased the knife? I think JB realized that he wasn't going to be able to hide the fact that he was stealing money. He kept making those excuses to not finish that last quarterly report because that would expose his embezzlement. He was trying to think of his options, so he bought himself time by claiming he was sick. The man had purchased a one-way ticket to leave from North Carolina to Nevada with, again, Nation's own credit card. This man has no shame. I believe he was planning to kill Jamie and Nation that night. Why else would he have waited to attack until after Nation came home? He was alone with Jamie for at least 20 minutes before Nation arrived home from work. I think the murder was planned. It was planned poorly, obviously, but still planned. The jury believed this too because JB was found guilty of the first-degree murder of Jamie Hahn and the first-degree premeditated murder of Nation Hahn, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The victim impact statements from Jamie's parents and her beloved husband Nation were read after sentencing, and they are, of course, just heartbreaking. Jamie's mother, Deborah Funderburk, stated, quote, "We are the parents to a dead child, not by natural causes, but by murder, and by murder at the hand of someone she and Nation loved and cared about and would have done anything in the world for." End quote. Her father, Chris Kirk, looked directly into JB's eyes and stated, quote, "You gave Jamie a death sentence. You gave all the rest of us a life sentence. And now you can share in that life sentence." End quote. Now I will play this clip of Nation Hahn because I think it shows how much love he truly had for his wife, Jamie.
I would give anything to hold her in my arms, to see her make this, what I refer to as a frog face when she was getting ready to kiss me, to kiss her, to hold her, to tell her I love her again, but I can't. But I hope that everyone will do what I try to do every day, which is take some of her with us. Some of her essential goodness, some of her love for others, her care, her concern, her compassion. Because we never really die as long as there are people who love us, who carry our example forward. And all of us who knew Jamie know that that spirit will carry forward with all of us. John, you killed her. You tried to kill me. But you can't kill her spirit. You can't kill what it was that made her so special. You can't cut her spirit out with that knife. And you couldn't stop her love for you if you tried. Thank you.
This case was a real heart twister. I feel so incredibly sorry for Nation Hahn and Jamie's entire family. She didn't deserve what happened to her. She had what seemed to be the biggest heart. She wanted to help people. She wanted to do good in this world. She was just 29 years old. She should have had so much more life to live. Jamie wanted to start a family. She wanted to continue her career with her love of politics. She will never get to do any of those things. And now there's just this huge gaping hole in the hearts of her family and her husband that just won't ever be filled without her. If there's any lesson to be learned from Jamie Hahn's case, it is to be careful and to be aware that anyone could have malicious intentions. Anyone could take advantage of you. Your parents, your siblings, your best friend. I hope that her family and loved ones have been able to find some sort of peace, knowing that the monster that took her life will never get out of prison. But that is all I have on today's case. Thank you so much for sticking with me. Don't forget to like, share on all social media platforms, and hit that subscribe button below. And if you have any particular true crime case you would like me to cover, you can send me an email at jtalkscrime@yahoo.com. Any and all recommendations are welcomed always. And I will catch you guys again on True Crime Thursday with Case 24. But until then, bye guys.